Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Act Subcommittee. I'm Michelle Parker, Lead Executive Advisor of the committee. I'm obliged to inform you this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view this meeting using the link on the agenda. At the start of the meeting, I'll ask members of the committee, officers and those making representations to introduce themselves. Everyone that speaks during the meeting is asked to introduce themselves each time they speak, so those listening know who is speaking. To ensure that those watching the live stream can hear, could all participants ensure they switch on their microphone prior to speaking? So can I ask the members to introduce themselves, please?
Yeah, Councillor Simon Jones, representing the Shrewsbury division.
Councillor Edward Towers, representing Wem Rural and Wixel.
Councillor Peter Brimwell, representing the WEM division.
Can I ask officers to introduce themselves, please?
I'm Emily Marshall, Committee Officer.
So Hill, licensed officer.
And can I ask people to making representations to introduce themselves, please?
I'm Zach Hammond. I'm the director of RB Shrewsbury Limited.
I'm Jan Boyd, I live at Council House Court. I'm Sarah Franklin, case resident in Council House Court.
Excuse me, not using the microphone. I'm Peter Stewart, Chairman of the Town Centre Residents Association.
Flat 126 Castle Street.
Patricia Lucky of 25 Castle Street, adjacent to 28. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alan Road, flat 7, 26 Castle Street.
I would like to turn to the items on the agenda. Are there any nominations for the position of chairman?
Yeah, I propose Edward Towers as chairman.
I'll second that.
So you'll now read the following statement.
Morning. The committee has read and considered the representations and evidence submitted by all parties in relation to the application before us. Therefore, presentations should be succinct and kept to a brief summary of key points. There is no need to read out written representations or reiterate the details of written representations at great length. I will intervene if it's felt necessary that presentations are becoming overly long or going off track or do not relate to the application being considered. The procedure for the hearing has been sent to you prior to the hearing. In general, we will aim to keep this to this order. We will aim to keep to this order of business to ensure the timely and fair conduct of the hearing of all parties. If it is felt necessary during the course of the hearing, the committee may make the decision to deviate from the procedure, and this is at the committee's discretion. There are opportunities throughout the hearing for each party to ask questions of others following the presentations. Please ensure that you use this opportunity to ask questions only and not to make any further points or statements. It is for myself to decide if questions are appropriate and relate to the matter in hand. Any behaviour considered to be disruptive by myself may lead to parties being muted or asked to leave the hearing. Does anybody have any questions regarding the hearing process or how the hearing will be conducted? Okay. Right, so now we move to the procedure in hand. Question for the licensing officer, Mr. O'Neill. Have any other representations made been withdrawn?
No, all representations are still current.
Thank you. Now, all parties, would any party present like to withdraw their representation? Now, another question for all parties. Does any party have any evidence not already submitted which they would like to put forward for consideration? Please be aware that this can only be done with an agreement of all other parties now present and the subcommittee, and may necessitate the hearing being adjourned so it can be properly considered by all parties and the subcommittee. No. So we move on to disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded to disclose any registerable or non-registerable interest in any matters to be discussed. If following the declaration of an interest, any party feels a member's decision making may be prejudiced, they should make it known. The hearing may then need to be adjourned so the committee can be reappointed. Nothing? No. Now we come to the licensing officer's report. Can the licensing officer introduce themselves and present their report? Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. So I'm Ross O'Neill. I'm the Public Protection Officer working within the licensing team and responsible for today's report. So you're here today to consider a new premises licence application which has been applied for by RB Shrewsbury Limited, and that's at Unit 1, Fawns Hall, 28 Castle Street in Shrewsbury. So part of my application, the pack I did for you, Appendix A and B of the report, are a map and photographs which will help set the scene for you. The application proposes to open a freshly baked bagel bar, serving a variety of bagels, coffee, non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverages to be consumed on and off the premises. Appendix C and D of the report are the submitted application and plan of the premises. So during consultation, trading standards, environmental protection and the police made representations along with Shrewsbury Furniture Scheme. They've all since withdrawn. They've all agreed additional conditions to the licence. You'll see Appendix E is a consolidated document to show all the agreed conditions to date, which has the applicant's initial conditions and the conditions agreed between trade standards, environmental protection, the police and the furniture scheme. Planning also made comments, but it was comment only, and then there were 9 other persons who made representations against this application. All have been given the benefit of the doubt as per the 182 guidance to allow them to amplify their concerns today. So you'll find Appendix F, 1 to 9, there's 9 of those for people to make their representations amplified today. The applicant has also submitted supporting information, and that is Appendix H for you to have a look at as well. So that's the application. So what you're here today is to consider and determine this application, and to do this you must give appropriate weight to the steps that are necessary to promote the 4 licensed objectives, any representations, the 182 guidance, the Licensing Act 2003 and Shropshire Council's licensing policy 2024 to 2029. You then may grant the application in full or in part, subject to such conditions deemed necessary and appropriate to the 4 licensed objectives. Or you can refuse if deemed appropriate, again in relation to the 4 licensed objectives. When you come to your decision, it must be justified and it must provide supporting evidence after, and that will be given to all parties involved. The decision can then be appealed within 21 days of all parties receiving that decision off you. That's it for me, Chair.
Thank you. You will now have an opportunity to ask any relevant questions of the licensing officer. The order I will take questions is from the applicant, and then other persons who have made representations, and finally ourselves, the committee. So, the applicant.
Zach Hammond, I've got no questions for the licensing officer.
Are there any more relevant questions to the licensing officer from the persons who have made representations? I'm sure. Would be microphone.
Yep. I've got one or two questions to ask the licensing officer, which are really for clarification more than any in-depth reply. I note that in the report, generally, there's reference to an area outside the red lines on the submitted plan. Red lines applying to the basement and ground floor area, but there is an area called external consumable area on the plan. Now, that is not included in the red line submitted by the applicant with his representation. And my first question is, how is that deemed to be included? This is the external area, because in certain places there's reference in the conditions in particular to the non-red lined area outside, as it were, partially onto the street, being included under your report in the way it's dealt with. Not a criticism, just a question.
Yes, to answer that for you, Peter. So what the applicant's done is applied for on sales. So on sales is the red section. So that's where he's allowed to sell the alcohol. So under the Licensing Act, it's the appropriation. So where he pours the pints, where he takes hold of the alcohol for customers. But also what he's applied for is off sales. So off sales is anywhere off the premises, so off that red section. And what they have to do during consultation, so on the plan, they have to put on the plan any areas where they will show to the authorities and members of the public an area where they wish members of the public to also consume in the vicinity of their premises. So that consumption area outside is what the applicant would like to sell alcohol inside, but he'd also want them to use off sales to take them outside in that area to consume. So that's when then the authorities can see what he's applied for, and the police, trade standards or members of the public can obviously see what his plan is. So on sales, off sales, red line on sales, off the consumption area is the off sales.
Okay, just one supplementary question to that, it's relevant to it. If the licence is granted in its current form, without any conditions, just keeping that simple for the moment, when it comes to that licence having been granted, would it be then possible in the future for the applicant to apply for a pavement licence in addition to the area that is indicated as a consumable area on that plan?
It's the area that is put on the plan. We've been told by the applicant that and he can speak about that himself later, but we've been told that is part of his rental agreement. So under the arch, that's his land, so it's not Shropshire Council land. If he does want to extend onto a footpath, then yes, he could apply for a pavement licence in the future. But there is terms and conditions. One of them is there's got to be enough room to get past on the footpath. Whether there is enough room is a different question. But theoretically, yes, he could apply for a later date.
Could you just repeat the last bit there?
The pavement licence. Yes, so theoretically he could apply for a pavement licence if there's enough room at a later date, but an officer would have to go and measure it. So he's saying that the land on that area is his, the area of the pavement, is there enough room? I don't know at this point, we have to go measure it, one of my colleagues will have to look into it, but theoretically, yes, he could apply for it.
And Chairman, just one question leading from that, then I will stop. The question of evidence of whether the land, I think in the representation, the applicant made mention of his deeds. I think specifically actually has a rental agreement, so deeds would not be appropriate. But is it necessary for you or any of your officers to have proof by seeing a plan on a deed or a rental tenancy agreement that area is included, or do you take his word for it?
No, if the licence is granted, I will be looking into it. So I'll be contacting colleagues to make sure, and we'll speak to the highways to make sure it's part of that land. If it's not, then obviously you can't use that part of land.
Right.
But until the licence is deemed granted, that's obviously something I'll do at a later date.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any other persons? Yes, please. Just state your name as you start, please.
My name is Sarah Franklin. See, on the land registry, the strip of land along this building is considerably more narrow than the area being applied for outside consumption. On the land registry deeds, it's around 80 centimetres, 82 centimetres, not 200 centimetres, as was stated in the application. I know you need to confirm this, so I'd just like to underline that this needs confirming.
Yeah, I've made a note of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other applicant? Sorry. Any other representation wanted today? Yes, please do.
Thank you. My name is Jan Zory. I have similar questions, really, perhaps overlapping, certainly concerning the area in front of the premises. And the guidance notes that the applicant receives when making the application explains the difference between on sales and off sales and the option to apply for both, as is the case here. And I'm just going to read out what it says. It says both would indicate that alcohol could be supplied for consumption on the premises, but could also be sold to be taken away. And the example is then given of a pub where patrons could also buy a bottle of wine to take home. And that seems quite different to me for an off sales that is just the window in front of the premises. And I wondered if you have any comment to make on that.
I can't comment on it, but I can tell you the kind of the licensing side of it. So you're correct that off sales allows for anything off the premises. So what Peter said before, so you've got the red line where you can sell the alcohol if it was granted, then off sales is anything off that red section. But what the Act states is that when they put the application, they should put an area to show consumption. So what the applicant's saying is I want that area to be consumption, but obviously also the off sales to take off the premises, like an off licence, would also be allowed as well, and less restrictive of conditions. So there's two elements of it. So what you normally get is, like you say, a red line for your licensed area, any consumption areas, and off sales allows that takeaway privilege as well, unless there's restrictions with conditions.
And supplemental to that, really, are you happy that an off licence should be granted to this area when there is no plan, no details of numbers of drinkers or how the seating will be arranged or any means of containment within the area?
Not a question for me.
And who is that a question for?
You have to speak to the committee when you your chat. You're asking me my personal opinion. I can't give that.
Well,
it's a personal opinion question. I can't answer that.
Would a licensing officer have to take into account the a plan of how many numbers of drinkers are likely to be in this area and how the seating arrangement would be on a potential pedestrian path?
The applicant's put what on his application. The area's been measured. It's gone to all the authorities to consider, and they put representations forward. One of the officers includes the licensing authority officer, which sits above me on the panel. He's not made any comments, so we're at where we are with representations.
So we don't know how seating would be in that area or how it would be contained.
It's the applicant's land. He's telling us that's something that if it's granted, we need to make sure it is their land. And then that needs to be contained with conditions. And that's something you can put forward to the committee to say what you're concerned about and come up with any conditions to make sure it's policed.
I think we have presentations if anyone can speak. Thank you very much. So we move to point number 4. The applicant presents your case. Can the applicant introduce themselves and present their application? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Hammond. I'm one of the directors of RV Shrewsbury Limited. And I'll also be the operations manager on the site. So you'll see me more than my other directors. I've obviously put in a license in order to carry out the sales of alcohol, and I had to stipulate on there for live music. This is not going to be a live music venue, but I was advised that I had to put that because if I'm holding an event such as a vinyl night and somebody decides to bring their own music, that's classed as live music and not recorded music. And then obviously this recorded music would be played after 11 p.m. Fundamentally, we are a restaurant. We'll be serving freshly baked bagels throughout the day, all the way up until 10, 11 o'clock at night, and sometimes later into the evening due to demand. The setting is very much a restaurant style setting. We'll be taking orders at the table and getting involved in whatever activities that Shropshire Council or local events take place, such as Loop Festival. And yeah, that's it really.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You now have the opportunity to ask any relevant questions of the applicant and the order Sorry, I've missed out the committee here.
The previous one.
The previous one,
Yeah. I didn't.
yeah. In there. Sorry. Thank you. We now have the opportunity to ask any relevant questions of the applicant, and the order I take questions is for the licensing officer first of all to the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. I've got no questions.
Thank you. Then any other persons who have made representations who wish to make questions of the applicant? Go for it.
First, Jan Boyd. Well, I think the Appendix H, I think, is actually quite useful because until we'd had the opportunity of reading that, we'd no idea what kind of business it was going to be. First mention of the vocal bar, I think, certainly that I was aware of. I'm concerned with the basement area, really, and in your Appendix, you say the basement has been assessed by Shropshire Council and is found suitable in terms of sound containment, as it is insulated with reinforced concrete and has significant separation from residential areas. And I just wondered who had carried out those tests for you.
That was Rob Holland that came out from Shropshire Council. And it's been noted by the fire department that actually reinforced concrete is a great barrier to fire risk and sound.
And could I ask how those sound levels were monitored and what levels were tested?
Nothing's been monitored or tested yet because nothing exists, but there will be a DB checkout on site when we open. And we will record that.
Thank you. And the idea of significant sound separation from residents, which residents did you have in mind?
The ones directly above and surrounding, so the guys next door.
Right. In Appendix E, which is the consolidated proposals that have been agreed, in the public nuisance section, point number 2, it's been agreed that external doors shall be closed after 2300 hours until the end of trading, with the exception only of immediate ingress and egress. Which doors have you got in mind? So it's a door. And what about the fire door in the basement?
That will only ever be used in the case of an emergency.
So in your windowless basement, do you have sufficient ventilation without opening the door?
Of course.
And, well, I suppose, will you have a noise prevention plan in policy? Thank you. You say that you're applying for a licence extension until 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday and Saturdays. And you say that the extension is in line with other establishments along Castle Street. Which establishments do you have in mind?
There's Bar Oil, that has the licence until 1 a.m, which is about 5 doors up. And Durham Oil opposite, their licence is until midnight. Albeit they don't use it, but they've been granted a licence.
Certainly their opening hours are much shorter than that.
Yeah, and then they finish up at 11 with drinking up. But nevertheless, they have a licence until midnight and they could use that at any point. And having spoken to St. Nicholas, theirs currently is 2300 hours. However, they are putting a licence soon to extend those hours to fall in line with most bars along that street and restaurants.
Which other restaurants and bars would you be referring to there?
In line with that, so Durham Oil, Glue has a licence until late. They finish at 11 o'clock and have off sales too.
Glue's in a slightly different section of the street, isn't it?
Still on the same street though.
And so the outside seating area or consumption area, it's referred to as various. How many people do you envisage being in this area?
Up to 12.
To 12. And how do you intend to prevent them spilling over into the access road to the car park and, in fact, onto the road?
We'll have cafe barriers.
So that will actually put a demarcation of where your area is.
Exactly.
And finally, are you intending to apply for planning permission for change of use?
At the moment, I've been told that I do not need change of planning permission because it falls under Class E as a restaurant.
So no, then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other persons wishing to make representation to the applicant?
Yeah, please, Chairman. Well, after you.
Sarah Franklin. I mentioned in my representation about the that side alley into the car park. It's dangerous as it stands, and I said that people who've had a drink or three, it's even more dangerous. Is there any way that some form of speed limitation for cars coming down that alley to join Castle Street can be implemented? I can't think how, but it is a pretty deadly alley, that, because I go up and down across that alley probably at least twice a day, and I wonder what consideration you've given.
Yes, the question is to the applicant at the moment, so the applicant to answer, but obviously.
I'm worried about sort of people gathering around your entrance, which is just one entrance.
Yes.
And it makes it very difficult because there are high walls on either side of that alley going into your car park. It is your car park, isn't it, for the building?
No.
And can I just continue to ask how many of your personnel and your employees will be using that car park as well? So that includes the traffic on this alley. I just see that alley as being very dangerous as it stands. Add overspilling pedestrians, drinkers, and more cars. I'll leave that one with you.
Okay. I'm not 100% certain whether that's relevant to me applying for the licence. However, I will entertain that. We have one car park space for myself or the other directors. There's about 32, 33 spaces for residents behind there, and I understand that some other businesses share that.
Yeah.
Our area is going to be all inside, and just the 12, up to the 12 people that will accommodate outside, which will be likely 2 benches, because it's not a great big deal of space. In terms of managing the entrance, we're not a nightclub. We're not going to have a queue, and if we did have a queue, I would love that, and we would manage that appropriately, which wouldn't be in the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Peter Stewart, Shrewsbury Town Centre Residents Association. Don't recall you, Zach, I'm not sure just I found as indeed one of the previous questions, the letter you wrote, as it were, afterwards, explaining what you're doing very helpful. And because before that, would it be true to say that in the representation you made, there's no mention at all of the word bagel bar or restaurant?
No, it wasn't required.
Okay, well, I'm not.
Yeah.
I think it's right to say those words don't appear anywhere in your representation.
Yeah.
So what I'm really saying is it's a great help, certainly to me, to understand the basis of the operation you're going to have.
Okay.
And that brings me to the next question, which is, you mentioned in your letter, which is in the representation, paragraph 2, the layout of red brick has been carefully planned with comfort and experience in mind. That leads me to question, in relation to the whole operation, I presume you have great experience in this area anyway. If so, could you perhaps enlighten me as to what that is?
Yeah. So I was part of the team that opened Dublin Oil.
Right.
Previous to that, I worked in the market at the Business Cafe. that's really where my hospitality journey started. Aaron Brown, one of the directors who had the business, asked me to come along on the journey of Dover Olive.
Right.
I was there from start to finish pretty much of the build. And then I was the general manager for the opening for almost 4 years.
Right.
In that time, we opened up our oil across the road. And then again, I went through the build, the licensing applications, through to general management of that until we got somebody else in that position. And then I would oversee the 2 venues. Upon leaving, I've opened up exactly the same business in Wellington, in Telford, as part of the Market, going back to my old roots. And I do exactly everything that I've applied for here, there. However, we do bigger scale of gigs.
Right.
As part of what the market wanted.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned the word gigs there.
Yeah.
In this same letter, you say Red Brick is not a gig or live music venue. I'm just putting out
That, yeah.
golden words. Are you aware what you put there? I mean, are you envisaging, just before I go any further, are you envisaging as well as DJ, or as you put them, live DJs, which was an interesting connotation, but, as opposed to lit ones. But are you aware of are you likely to have live music there rather than recorded music?
The only time that we would look at that is if it was acoustic only.
Okay. Are you aware what you put in your representation, page 26, under what music you would like to have or have applied for in the basin? Are you aware of the wording of that?
Yes.
What does it say?
I don't have it time.
Well, I can tell you what it says. It says live DJs and musicians.
Yeah.
Now, it seems to me from what you've just said that musicians to me, and I'm long in the tooth, musicians to me means a band, it means a group, it means live music, it means more than one person. If it does say musicians, would you like to reconsider whether you would wish to include live music as you put it in on page 26 at section E, or would you deem it appropriate in view of what you've said in your subsequent letter to remove that from the representation if the committee so decided they'd allow that? Or do you wish to keep the word musicians in?
I would like to keep the word musicians in. It gives me more scope to get involved with activities that happen in the town, which is quite regular.
On your premises?
Yes, within my premises, yes.
So that would mean, going back on what you've said in here, that could lead, very opposite to what you've said, it could lead to, as I put it, live gigs or live musical performances in the future. You just said you'd like to see how the town goes and then adapt accordingly.
I would like to get involved with everything that happens within the town, within scope of what we would do. The reason I use the term musicians is more on an acoustic level as opposed to a live band. There is simply no room for a live band. It's too small, and that would be a fire risk and a public risk. The reason that I use musicians rather than band, because I would think that people generally would think, okay, yeah, people may come down and want to host on Wednesday night, a ukulele club, okay, which I know exists in the town. Same as the reason, just touching on what you said, live DJ. It is a very funny wording, but I was obviously told if they decide to play their own music whilst DJing, or anybody else brings it, because currently in Wellington I host Bring Your Own Vinyl Nights. If it's their own music, that comes away from the recorded music. So it's technically classed as a live performance.
Right. So really, your letter here that you've written, I call it letter because that's what it is, although it's very open and transparent, actually in the letter is not true when it says you're not going to in the future have live gigs there because you might just change your mind.
I would adapt to whatever the town is doing, but generally it's not in our scope at the moment.
At the moment?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Are there any other representations, questions? Yes, sir. Would like to come forward, give your name, please.
Sabar Shamash. I live, thank you. We live just behind your property in Council House Court. Our bedrooms will be very opposite, almost opposite your fire exit. So my questions now are, you say the fire exit will only be used for fire escape. What happens to your refuse, you know, the bottles you have and so on? Where will they be placed?
There's a bin store that all the businesses and residents use in Florence Hall, which I'm sure you're aware of, at the back of the building where the car park is.
So you...
And we will only take out refuse at appropriate times.
Appropriate times. Does it go through the front door or through the fire exit?
We'll go through the front door at appropriate times.
Front door,
The front,
not the fire door.
not the fire door.
It's a roundabout way, isn't it?
Literally just down the alleyway that everybody else uses, through the gate, and other businesses use.
Right. I think that's my main question, really. And okay, about the noise level. Will you be inviting the environmental people to check your decibels before you start using the music? You know, by showing what is the level of the DJ, you know, his equipment, what decibel he should be emanating.
So what we've got in-house, which anybody can come and see once it's installed,
Yeah.
is actually classed as a restaurant background noise sound system.
Right.
We don't have subs or live equipment, so to say. The DJ is more of an aesthetic to the offering as opposed to the main attraction.
Okay.
So they'll go through the house PA.
Yeah.
And
so the sound level will be similar going to a restaurant, and they usually have some background music.
especially upstairs. Downstairs, it'll be enough so that people can still talk and have a drink
Yeah.
and dine, as opposed to having to shout over each other.
Okay. Right.
That's our whole concept.
What about smokers? Usually in any environment like that, there are lots of people wanting to smoke. Do they go out the front door? You think you'll have a milieu of lots of people smoking? Or how do you envisage what happens?
What I've found in running restaurants is generally those that do smoke or vape tend to go out of the premises and they'll go on to walkways or they'll walk away. We will be putting in refuse on site for smokers, but the outside area will be a no smoking area in terms of the consumption area, as I've had to put on the plan because it's a dining area.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Do I press that button again? Yes, sir. Okay. Are there any other persons wanting to ask relevant questions of the applicant? Yeah, please.
Hi, Zach.
Hello.
Hi, Brenda van der Peel.
Thank you.
So, Zach, as you're probably aware from my representation, my main concern is the outside space, because you are very close to 26 and we do have the stone steps. And even though you say you're going to have signage outside, I don't believe that people adhere to this. And I believe that when people do come out to smoke, they will inevitably use our steps. And I think they will sit on them. With the best will in the world of yours and your establishment, I don't think you're going to be able to stop it. But what I would like to ask you is, what steps are you going to actually put in place apart from the signage? And also, I don't want to have to fight to get into my front door when I'm coming home of an evening, because there are drunken people loitering outside my building and making noise. It's a very huge concern of mine.
Is that a concern of yours because that currently exists? Or is that a concern of yours because that currently exists? Or is that what you think will happen when?
I can see it happening because even if you look at oil, people, even though they've got just one bench and it's inside the window area, people spill out and you have to actually cross the road to walk past of an evening. They don't adhere to the area. And it's just natural that when they come out of those doors, the angle they're at, we're here, we're right next door. So people already do it. But so it's just a natural human instinct, I believe. So what would you do to prevent it apart from the signage?
So we've got clear markers where our patrons will go, which is the 2 benches outside. That'll be up to 12 people. We've got the cafe barriers there to clearly define. On the weekends, we will have door staff, and they will be told that everybody within our establishment, if they're dining with us, they will be in our consumption area only. Nobody will be spilling over. All the staff will be trained on this, and the DPS will be trained on this. And moving forward, should there be any problems, we will address those. But I don't envisage that happening because predominantly this is dining. It's not a pub, it's not a club. And my understanding is most outside areas, however, the business that you just gave an example of, I understand have had a variation to their license from the police and fire, and elevated drinking will not be happening on the site.
But you've still got the smokers.
Yeah, the smokers, if they're dining with us and they're smoking, we'll have clear markers where we can like address that and obviously have them take into consideration. We've got people dining outside, and if they decide to like walk off the premises and go somewhere else, they won't be dining with us. And we'll make sure.
So you said that the consumption area is non-smoking.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, where are the smokers going to go? And this is why I'm saying it's human nature. We are literally just opposite you.
Yeah.
So I envisage they will go there. So I still don't understand how your team are going to police that area to stop your patrons from smoking outside my building.
If anybody's a patron of ours, they will be within our boundaries. They will not be going anywhere else. If they do that, they'll be asked to either leave or move into the area. That is our area. We will not be having anybody sitting on steps, spinning out. There's a road in between it, as far as I'm concerned. There'll be clear, defined lines of where we will be operating.
It doesn't really fully answer my question because...
No, the question is asking your patrons who decide to go off your premises, where will they go? And likely, they're concerned, on her premises or by herself, causing a nuisance to themselves. So the question is, how are you going to address that? And
if there are patrons and they spill out for whatever reason with their bagel and coffee or non-alcoholic or alcoholic beverage, there's clear markers to say where you can go and dine. If they do that, we'll just retain them back in. Weekends, we'll have door staff on, so they'll be monitoring that. But I can't really envisage anybody going out. That doesn't generally happen with restaurants.
No. Okay, sorry.
But also, from what I've seen, you're going to be a takeaway and delivery establishment.
Mm-hmm.
So for the delivery side of things, what transport are you going to have, and where are they going to park when they come and pick up the food to then take it to deliver it?
We won't have our own delivery drivers. We'll use third parties.
Yes, where are they going to park?
I'm sure that they will all know where to park when they come in.
But what area? You must have.
You've got the lay-by over. I don't need to monitor and control that. That's not part of the licensing act. That is more part of when they come up. They will go. They will go probably in the lay-by like they do for Darwin Oil.
Yeah, my concern is I have seen deliveries. I'm not saying it's going to happen for your establishment, but I want to address my concern. Is that what they do is they park in the alleyway, right, the entrance to the car park, get out, deliver, then get back in again. So my concern is that they're going to be blocking the entrance to the car park, which again is next door to our building. That's another concern. And then you're going to get other cars beeping because they're in the entranceway. So that's added noise. I'm concerned about noise.
Okay. All the drivers that we'll work with, I don't envisage them parking in a junction that's dead end or a clear car park. If they do, we'll obviously be able to tell them and advise them where they can park. That obviously exists. I'm guessing that's why you're bringing it up.
I've seen it.
But I mean, this problem doesn't exist currently. I think that's more a problem of like people making deliveries to the apartments as opposed to myself, because I don't technically.
No, I know, but you're saying it's going to be third party, so you really don't have any control over where they're going to be parking to come into your establishment to pick up the food to take as a delivery.
Yeah, from my experience of working with these three third parties in other settings, such as Doe and Oil opposite, they generally go in lay-by, and I'm pretty sure they self-manage where they can and can't go.
But if it becomes a problem, then I can come to you and you can.
Of course, anybody can come to me with any problems.
Okay, it's just a concern that, you know, you're going to have off licence, off sales, you're going to be a delivery, a takeaway, in dining, off premises drinking. And to me, it's an inappropriate place to have such an establishment because of the noise factor. We're a grade 2 listed building. We're not allowed to have double glazing. I have a concern about getting in and out of my property because of patrons from your establishment blocking it, and also noise from the back. So I've got it both sides. The noise issue and the loitering is a concern.
Yes, thank you for raising those. They have been heard by the committee, and what we're talking about, I think, slightly outside the application is knock-on effects, which obviously might well be involving other authorities within the town to address.
But the long hours, the licensing hours, is it is a concern because there's going to be a lot of noise from the drinking.
And we have heard that.
Okay,
Thank you very much indeed, Taz. Are there any other wanting to correct representations and ask questions of the applicant? Yes. Could you give your name first, please?
My name's Callum Rowe, live in the ground floor flat of 26 Castle Street. Apologies if this has already been asked, I did pop out briefly. Downstairs in the basement, you said it's a restaurant area. Are those tables ever going to be cleared to make space for dancing or anything like that? Or are those tables always going to be set so it'll always be just for dining with background music?
The tables will be set unless an event approaches us. We've been approached by the International Comedy Festival in order to host comedians in July, which then they will bring in a theatre style seating. So we would adapt it for things like that. But generally it's set in stone in terms of the layout. It's not a club.
So it wouldn't be adapted to make space for dancing, dance floors, things like that.
I guess that would come up. I'm just trying to think outside the box here. If one of you guys wanted to host one of your birthday parties or, you know, a celebratory time, we could always adapt it to that. But the concept and the idea is first and foremost a restaurant.
So yes, so the concept won't be that from 10 o'clock when there's no one dining, bring your own vinyl night, you then clear the tables for people to use it to dance and stuff.
No.
Yeah, thank you.
It's more, I'll say the stuff that everybody knows because nobody's really come to me back with that letter. It's more of a venue that personally I find lacks after such a time. That you can't just go and have a drink or some food. I've done it recently and it was live music venues and I had no time to really talk with my partner or friends. So the idea, which you'll see if you want to come in once the sound system's in, it's small speaker restaurant style. It's not, you know.
Yeah, dance floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions to the applicant and the representations? Yes.
Sarah Franklin, I'm not clear from the information I've received as to what the dining experience, and I know this isn't necessarily part of the total licensing application, what food is going to be served, where is your ventilation of your cooking facilities going to happen. But you speak about bagels, but that doesn't make a dining experience. What food are you planning to cook and serve and to vent the kitchen area? I'm not clear.
So the food offering
The offering, yeah?
is predominantly bagels with sides. So I'm sure you're familiar with bagels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like a burger bar, but with holding. So
Okay.
similar thing. So fresh bagels. So we're going to do everything freshly on site, and then obviously fillings from like cold to hot fillings. Ventilation wise, it's going out the back, and it's pointed away from 25-26 Castle Street.
So out the back or at a high level or just where in terms of level?
So that comes out onto the car park and shoots up.
Right. And the noise of the ventilation? Some of these ventilators can be incredibly noisy. I mean, the one out the back of Doe and Oil, for example, is horrendously noisy.
Where, sorry? And you hear that from?
Well, yeah, when I walk past, I can't, I live so close and I pass that. I can't hear it now because my room is away. It's very noisy, food ventilation, kitchen ventilation.
Okay, our ventilator has a silencer and it's within the building as opposed to external. I think you might be getting confused with those aircon units as opposed to the ventilation because their ventilation's in the kitchen, not outside the back.
You wouldn't have said it was normal air ventilation. It's a power thing. Doesn't make me think it's a normal air ventilation or room ventilation system. But Doe and Oil are really
Guildhall has the air conditioning at the back, and then their ventilation system comes out to the side of the street.
Okay, well, but the dining experience you're talking about is bagels.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Bagels, sides, charcuterie in the evenings, so everything that complements that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And again, are there any other people wanting to ask questions? The applicant. Thank you. There it comes to the turn of the committee. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Simon Jones. The only question I was going to ask is just a bit more clarification about the outside consumption area. Is there an intention to have any tables there as well, or is it literally just seating that you're talking about?
At the moment, the idea was to have 2 benches that could accommodate up to 6 on a bench. Typically, we find it's normally 4, but they say that it could be 6. That's why I've used the term 12 people, up to 12 people. If that was to change, it would change to the same as if you're familiar with like Quay in town and Cat's Pajamas, which will be then 4 tables with 2 seats. But I'll never exceed the 12, and they'll be within that area.
And the intention is with the obviously with the benches is that it's there's no vertical drinking. If anybody's out there, they're sat.
That's a condition that's been stated by the police.
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Broomall? All questions being asked. Just back on this. Yes, so the outside seating area is marked by a fence of some sort.
Yeah, cafe barrier.
Yeah. And the seating, as you envisage it, is back onto the window of the premises, facing out into the street, rather than back onto the highway.
That's right.
Yeah, got it. The waste arrangements you've got there, and maybe I've missed something in the detail because I've been listening to the conversation quite closely, but you have access to a bin store across the car park at the back.
At the back of Thorns Hall, down that alleyway, the cobbled out
Still the photograph, yes.
Yeah.
That's where you have your storage. And that could be going, that waste could be going at any time.
No, we'll put in markers for that, like I've done in other establishments. So glass wouldn't typically leave until after 9 a.m. in the morning. We'll have a refuge in the basement. So we will store that there. That's what I did at Oil, and that's what we did at Doe and Oil. So that'll typically come out at 9 o'clock. And we will go take that up to the cobbles. We wouldn't want to interfere by, late night or early mornings. The idea is to try and contain everything inside and take it out at appropriate times.
Gotcha. Thank you. And I think you've answered the smoker's question. The access that was being asked about to the car park at the back, this is private land, of course. It's not your land, it's somebody else's land. So in a sense, it's outside your application and you can't enforce that in that way, except through goodwill at your door.
Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Can I just ask about licensing hours? Do you see these as being needed to make your business viable and work, or could they be reduced, do you think, and see how you go and then extended if necessary?
I think that they would be needed to fall in line with the culture within that street and within the town. I know that other licence venues within the vicinity have been granted those licences, and I think it would be unfair to deny me the same opportunity to grow my business than those granted of my competitors.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. No further questions, so Mr.
No, I think.
Right. Now we come to the point where any other person who has made a representation to the application will be given an opportunity to outline their case, and presentations will take place in the following order. Are there any more representations to be made? Now,
I just said that.
yes. So we now have the opportunity to ask any relevant questions of those who have made representations. And the order I take questions is that
Any other person's made
relation to the application, given an opportunity
to outline
their case.
and that would be in this order.
In this order. Right. Okay. Yeah. So confusing for that. Right. So we come to make anybody who's made a representation now presents their case. I'm going to go with yourself first of all.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Any other representation you want to make to having heard what you've heard this morning? Do you want to make add anything to what you're saying to your case?
Yes, of course. What I would like to add is, and kind of get the point across, I'm very approachable. If it means that we could set up a communication link, I'm more than happy to give out my personal phone number and share those of the DPSs on the site. I'd like to think from my experience of being at Durham Oil with many apartments above me, same as oil apartments above and surrounding areas. I've done due diligence and again, I'm approachable. So if there is any problems, you can either call me or come and see me and we'll deal with it appropriately. I'm here to work together and I hope that we're a good presence on the street. I know there was many other things highlighted, such as littering. You know, we're going to be a good representation of Castle Street and we'll work with everybody within the surrounding areas.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the basis of that from yourselves to the applicant? No. Are they now we come to anybody else who wishes to heard that? So yes, that's right. So we now go down to Jan Boyd to make any further comments she wishes to make at this stage.
So I'm Jan Boyd. I live in Council House Court. The Appendix A shows the open space behind the premises, which is used as a car park and has been referred to. And I think it's quite useful that you can see there are various residential properties that really skirt the outside of that car park. And Appendix B, the first photograph, shows access to the car park. We've had a lot of talk about the actual roadway into it. But you will see on that photograph, there is a brick wall. And that is actually my garden wall there. So that shows you how close I am to the back of this premise. I'd like to stress the difference really between the setting of the residential area that exists behind Castle Street. Castle Street is a busy road There are lots of different businesses on it, very successful ones, I hope, and also necessary for the life of Shrewsbury town. But we must also consider the lives and the well-being of the residents who live in quite secluded areas, really, behind these main streets. I referred in my representations to the lack of a planning application because it's my belief that the planning would have to take into wider considerations, really, if there was to be a planning application, not just the property itself, but also the wider concerns of residents. So I'm disappointed that there isn't going to be an application in these case, but perhaps the committee will still be open to the concerns of the residents. I'm not going to go through all my representations again, there were quite a lot. But I would like to just mention the live music licence. And I want to reiterate really the things that have been said in this Appendix H, which gives a feel for the business that's going to be carried out there. And I'm just going to read out various quotes. The basement is not a gig or live music venue. Music at Red Brick will be ambient, with recorded music playing in the main space and the DJ in the basement area. The DJ will contribute to the atmosphere akin to background music rather than a headline act. Red Brick is not a loud or rowdy late-night venue. Our vision is to create a warm, sociable environment where people can enjoy good quality food, drink and music rather than a headline act. And based on that, I would suggest that really there's no live music licence required. And I'm looking at the guidance again, when you ask for further details in the application. It's the Operating Schedules and Premises Plans Guidance, version 2, dated July 2024. It says, in the further details section for each licensable activity you are applying for, you should provide any useful additional information about the activity you plan to offer. For example, live music, amplified or unamplified, what type of music, how many musicians will there generally be, how often will there be live music? Well, there is no information to that effect in the application. We've heard verbally that it wants to be some adaptation, might change your mind, see what's going to prove popular, how you can attract business. But I would ask the committee at this stage to deal with the application as it stands and consider that there should be no live music licence here. With regard to recorded music, again, going back to the guidance, you're asked what type or style of music. And I think the information that's come out is that it will be ambient. Do you intend to use a live DJ or a sound system? And in this case, I would suggest both. Will there be a DJ nights? I think the answer to that probably is yes. Whether or not it's going to offer karaoke, there's no mention. But I think really, on the basis of that, I would suggest that there is nothing to support an application for live music, and certainly not one between the hours of 2300 hours and 1 o'clock in the morning. The licensing hours, I wasn't particularly going to mention as a separate issue, but during the course of this morning, and with the applicant's particular experience of oil, certainly I inquired as to the licensing hours for St Nicholas, and I was advised that it was to 2300 hours for all days. The opening hours, which are certainly advertised for oil and dough during the week, none of them exceeds 2300 hours, and in the week it's actually earlier. I am very concerned that that particular stretch of Castle Street is going to change significantly if, by granting this extension on this occasion, you find that St Nicholas are going to also be asking for the same thing. And, well, if it appears oil have already got the licence, I don't know that, but certainly they are not using it at the moment. And that is going to change considerably the feel of that stretch of road, which of course is the one that all of the residents here are most concerned about. And also there's been a reference to the outside area. We hear now that there's going to be no tables, there's going to be 2 benches. We've been told it's a police condition that there's no vertical drinking, but I gather that is the condition outside oil as well. And if anybody's tried to walk along that stretch of pavement in the daytime, you know that that's not actually complied with. So I think the committee here has a delicate balance to make, really, between the residents and business. I'm sure there is a suitable compromise for us all. Now, I do have some conditions that I would like you to consider, but perhaps that would be best in the summing up, would it, rather than now?
Yes, closing remarks for each party. There will be opportunity.
Thank you.
Now come to Frankwell. Do you want to make a further comment?
I think I've made the comments as we went along. I don't have no further to say.
That's fine, and that may well have happened for quite a few. This is the purpose of the committee, and this where the hearing's been set up is to make sure that everybody's heard everybody on everything. The order slightly irrelevant as long as everybody's had their say. Patricia, Lucky, do you want to say anything further?
No, I think everything's been said.
It's been said. Yeah. Callum Roach.
Yeah, the same thing.
Again said. Thank you. Thank you much. Saba Shamash.
That's fine.
No further. Peter Stewart, do you want to say anything?
Just briefly, sir. I'm not going to reiterate what was in the representations put in, but just to quickly explain to you and your colleagues that the Shrewsbury Town Centre Residents Association has approximately between 150 and 160 members. It's had a reinvigoration since COVID, and we, although our objects, I should say, are to represent residents in the loop of the town centre, which this, of course, is included in that area. One of our other objects is to foster a balance between residents, visitors, the retail side, and generally people who are in Shrewsbury Centre. So it's not just a partisan group. And indeed, in the representations that were made, you will see that these were generally supportive of residents who I didn't then know, except for a few of the residents, what their objections would be, or representation, I should say. So the word balance was used a few minutes ago by Jan, and I think that's what I would say here. There is a happy balance in what is decided, what conditions may be imposed, rather than a free-for-all. And it seems to me, and I will mention this in summing up, that the areas of live music, the areas of restricted numbers being in the basement and the ground floor, evidence of the outside situation in relation to its legal status, and why the hours requested are so late. Would not 11 p.m. be quite late enough? Those are the three or four aspects that I, in my summing up, would give attention to. I will not add to representation, but largely to endorse what's been said by all the others here who live within close proximity of the house.
Yes, it's a collection of these thoughts coming together. Thank you. So we now move to Randa van der Peer.
And nothing further.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, we have an opportunity to ask further questions of those before that, haven't we? Okay. So, we'll take that information.
You should have done that between each.
No, just clarify, Chair. Sorry, no questions, but can I just clarify from what's been said by the...
Yes, please do that.
With Jan, she's mentioned planning. Zach did mention that he's been given advice. There is a section in my report about planning that potentially, is it a restaurant, is it not? That's not for you to decide, that's for planning. If members of the public have got concerns, they can go to planning themselves and they can discuss that whether the appropriate plan is in place.
Right.
Live music and recorded music, because he's applying for on sales. So what we spoke about with Peter at the start, the red line, that means he's entitled to have live and recorded music between the hours of 8 in the morning and 11 o'clock at night. So you can't restrict live music and recorded music at this point. That would be restricted by a review application, and that could be submitted by the members of the public or Rob Boland, who's the Environmental Protection Officer. So obviously what you could do is restrict it after 11 o'clock, if that's how you chose with the live and recorded music, but not prior to 11 at this point. There's also mention about numbers in the basement. Usually numbers come on the fire risk assessment. So the fire risk assessment, which the premises should have limited numbers on the fire risk assessment, which would then say how many should be in the basement and upstairs. And that is the premises. That's for them to make sure they police it, unless you feel that it needs to be obviously policed more. But obviously, I don't know the numbers in the basement to help you with that. I just wanted to clarify those points so we don't go off air track from a licensing point of view.
No, that's very helpful. Right. And then we come to applicant again, I think at this stage. You're hearing all the conversation here, Zach. Is there anything you wish to, we'll come to closing remarks at the end, but is there anything you want to say further at this stage?
The only thing that I do want to really touch on just with these brief remarks just then, obviously it hasn't been very clear. I've only really had communication with Brenda. Nobody else has really kind of come down to me, or I've not really approached them. I approached people within the building because I thought that was going to be more of a problem, and it's not. I just want to reiterate that we are a restaurant. We're kind of more a modern day dining sort of place. It's not a pub, a club, a nightclub, anything like that. As I've said before, I'm 38 years old, 39 this year. When I go out with my partner, I want somewhere nice to go and have a drink. And after, normally 11 o'clock, you'll have Henry Tudor. I think that's kind of it. Everything else is too noisy. And the idea here is people can still come, have a snack, have food, have drinks, and actually be in an environment that they can actually hear themselves, which will be proved when we're open upon being granted the license and having the chance to kind of show myself. I'm sure that anybody within the authorities will come at me if there's any ongoing issues or problems, and I adhere to all the authorities and any stipulations and conditions that they would do.
Thank you for that. And finally, just before we get to closing remarks, any questions at this point from yourself?
No, not to do.
No. Okay. The only one I wanted to ask about here is this restricted numbers. Do you have any restriction on numbers at all?
We will, of course, have. On Friday the 2nd May, this Friday, I've got BMG Fire Safety coming in to carry out the risk assessment.
That's not been done yet?
That's not been done yet, purely because I wanted to get an outside person to come in. I could have done that myself, but I want to go down the appropriate channels in order to know that.
Will give you the guidance you need.
Exactly that.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. But now we do come indeed to the closing remarks from each party. Each party will now be permitted a brief opportunity to make any closing remarks. This should not be a repeat of the case already made or discussions during the questions which we've been having, but you may have some points to clarify or additional comments as to result of the questions and discussion. If you have nothing further to say, you do not have to speak, and we will work with, first of all, the licensing officer. I think that is all I need to say here. Yeah, so Mr. O'Neill, do you have any further closing remarks to make, summing up your main points that the committee could take away?
Thank you, Chair. No remarks. I just want to reiterate why you're here today, though. So it's to consider and determine this application. And to do this, you must give appropriate weight to the steps that are necessary to promote the 4 licensing objectives, any representations, the 182 guidance of the Licensing Act 2003, and also Shropshire Council's licensing policy 2024 to 2029. So then you may grant the application in full or in part, subject to such conditions deemed necessary and appropriate to the 4 licensed objectives. You also can refuse, again, if you deem it appropriate in relation to the 4 licensed objectives. Your decision must be justified and provide supporting evidence after to all involved parties, and the decision can be appealed by all parties within 21 days of receiving your decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. For benefit of the public, that was recorded for us as outset and in our notes as well. Any other persons wish to make any closing remarks at this point? Start with the residents.
Yes.
Yes, please.
So Dan Boyd again. I'd like the committee to consider imposing conditions on any licence that is granted today. It would seem that you are not able to restrict live music before 11 o'clock in the evening, 2300 hours. But I would ask that you certainly do not extend the licence beyond 2300 hours. There's been recognition that the external consumption area is not included in the licence for on sales. There seems to be perhaps some, there has to be subject to proof of tenancy of the area that is considered to be the outside space. And on proof of that, if it is considered appropriate for off sales in that area, then I would ask that a condition for external consumption area should only be usable from 12 noon until 1900 hours. I was going to ask for a condition that there should be a maximum number of customers in the basement of 30, which is the number referred to in the application. As we've heard now, the fire officer will be making a report and that will become relevant on that point. I feel there should be a condition that there is a noise prevention plan and policy in place, and the applicant has confirmed that he will be arranging for that, and that the use of the fire door at the rear of the premises should only be open in the case of emergency situations. And the applicant has agreed that will be the case. A condition that on Friday and Saturday and other special days, the licensing hours be limited to 2300 hours.
Okay, I was writing. Could you repeat that again?
A condition that on a Friday and Saturday and other special days, the licensing hours be limited to 2300 hours, not any later hours. And if off sales are to be allowed, I would suggest a condition that off sales be restricted to 22:30 hours on all days generally, and specifically limited to the outside consumption area to 1900 hours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Any closing remarks from anybody here present? Good. And that's the applicant's opportunity now. So, would you like to, any closing remarks you wish to make?
Yeah, thank you. The representations made are purely speculative and are unsupported by any actual evidence. As the premise is not yet opened, it cannot be held to be responsible for any existing problems such as antisocial behaviour or public nuisance such as activities reported down the coupled roads. I believe our presence will serve as a deterioration to such behaviour, and we will increase security to that area by means of extra CCTV, being linked with Shopwatch, being part of PubWatch, and naturally as a new venue opens it and works into the evening, it becomes an area that will not attract homeless sleeping, which that area currently does. I note that the other licensed venues in the vicinity of me have been granted licenses until midnight on weekdays and 1 AM on weekends. Along with live and recorded music, I feel it would be unfair to deny me of the same opportunity to run my business than those that are granted of my competitors. I've said before that I'm more than willing to work with the public and the residents. It was touched on just then. I think Jane brought it up in terms of the live music conditions. We're not going to have live music in terms of bands and musicians playing after 11 o'clock. The reason that I was told that that needed to be in there is if the DJ is downstairs and playing and they've got their own music, it's more to cover that, but it's not in our business plan to have that. And that will fall in line with such activities that are run by Shropshire Council and independent events that work with councils such as LUFA. I don't know how that could maybe be changed in terms of a condition, but we're not going to have live musicians or acoustic people or anything like that playing. It was more reference the DJ and the ambience there, that if they wanted to put their own music on as opposed to recorded music. Like I've already stated before, I've got no problems with sharing my number with everybody. Everybody in Frankwell will have that as well. Any ongoing, I'll work with you. And it was mentioned before about other licensed businesses. I just wanted to make a comment on that. If that is happening and they're not adhering to their license, I'm sure the authorities will either bring that up or you as public members will be able to report that. We do things properly at Redbrick as the trading name. We'll work with you and we'll make sure that we're doing everything, working with local authorities and associated bodies.
Thank you. So thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you. And now we come to any clarifications necessary from the legal officer.
No clarification.
No clarifications necessary. Right. Well, we now come to a close of this hearing. We will now withdraw to deliberate and make a decision. The hearing will close and you can leave the meeting. All interested parties will be advised of the decision in writing within 5 working days of this hearing, and the decision will be sent to you in the same way you communicated with the licensing team prior to the hearing. For example, if you emailed representation to the application, you'll receive a decision by email. Any party who feels aggrieved by the decision that this committee takes has the right to appeal to the Magistrates' Court. This appeal must be made in writing to Stafford Magistrates' Court within 21 days of the notice being received. I think that concludes our hearing. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you.